that people understand the power that they have within them. And that really, I think it's our responsibility to encourage people to exercise that power, to help them demonstrate it and apply it in our communities and towards the things that are so important to all of us. So this is really, really, really important to me.
Yes. Oh, that is amazing to hear. Right. The power is within us all. I love it so much. Okay. I know there is so much going on in Michigan that you are a part of leading. Such a busy man. Thank you so much for being here today. I do want to start off. I believe this is the most important question of the day. Are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. What movie could you watch for the rest of your life and why?
Above the Rim.
Above the Rim?
I used to be a basketball player. I'm 6'8". For those who don't know, my slogan, "Stand Tall for Michigan," is very literal. And Above the Rim is something I could watch all day, every day. And if I had to pick a second one, which is a better, higher quality answer, is The Godfather 2. I think you can learn like every lesson about life and business and leadership from Godfather 2.
Well, like you have those two movies, one that kind of you find yourself able to relate to the characters and just the plot line, being able to play basketball. That is amazing. I'm a tall girl myself, and so I appreciate, staying tall for Michigan.
I love it. I love it. So I have 3 kids. I have a 1-year-old baby girl born on Juneteenth last year. And then I have a twin son and daughter who are 6. And my daughter is really, really tall. She's 6 years old. She's probably 4 feet 6 inches right now. Like, she's really tall. So, she gonna be up there.
Hey, she may find herself in the league or just doing anything. We are still capable of everything. Our height just make us more noticed. And I love The Godfather too, because we can just learn so many different life lessons, like you said. I love that. But definitely, I know I may have thrown you off with that question, but I was sincere about it being the most important to me because I wanted to know more about who you are separate from being a politician. You're human first, and I know everyone probably after a long day at work has a favorite movie they can come home and watch. So I love that. So, okay, I have another question for you.
Yeah.
What you said?
No, I said, go ahead, I'm ready.
Okay. So recently, the executive board declared racism as a public health crisis. That is amazing. Thank you so much for your groundbreaking work. This is just a step into the right direction for us all. To combat racism in Michigan, can you please tell us more about the process and creation of the Black Leadership Michigan Council? I just want to know it all.
Yeah.
All the details.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that wisdom. So let's take a step back. People of color are a very important part of Michigan's present, our history, and our future. And that goes all the way to the indigenous and native peoples whose land that we are currently living on. And all of us, for all of us, that is true. And we have to always acknowledge that. Now, when it comes to Black folks, I'll talk about the Black Leadership Advisory Council first. Black people are the largest racial minority in the state of Michigan. And that's Black people that may have America as where they were born or may be immigrants from other nations as part of the African diaspora. And there are and have been for a number of years in state government, a number of commissions that sort of represent different racial and ethnic minorities in our state. And what they do basically is they make sure that there's a seat at the table for representative leaders from these communities as policy decisions are made in state government. But that's never existed for Black people in Michigan until now. So through executive action, we are making a clear statement that the leadership of Black people coming from different walks of life, whether people are coming as young people, I'll start with this, we have made sure that there will be at least one space on this commission for a Black person between the ages of 18 and 35. We've made sure there'll be at least one space for a Black person who is an immigrant, or someone experienced immigration policy. But we want educators, we want public health professionals, we want parents, we want artists and designers. We want people from all walks of life that represent the totality of the Black experience in Michigan to be part of how we make choices, how state government thinks about issues, how we collect data and information about the impact the policy has on Black people. That's really important. So that's one piece that we announced about a week ago. Next, talking about the declaration of racism as a public health crisis. The reason that's important is because I don't think I have to explain to any Black person, certainly, the impact of racism on our health outcomes when it comes to basic things like the fact that there are not a lot of doctors literally located in Black neighborhoods. There are not a lot of pharmacies literally located in Black neighborhoods. Many Black people are uninsured or underinsured through no fault of their own. And so we need to think about the outcomes that are the results of some of these choices and how these systems have been set up over time. So the Declaration of Racism in the Public Health Crisis enables us to use every tool in state government to actually dig into how we can make different policy choices, how we can make different decisions that can lead to better health outcomes for our people. And one thing I have seen in response to this, the response has been, for the most part, positive. There have been people who have said like racism is more than a public health crisis. And I just want to be like really clear that like I agree with that. Saying that something is not saying that it's not something else, right? But I think that it's abundantly clear that the impact of structural, systemic, and individual racism has led to poor health outcomes for people of color in the state of Michigan and frankly in our nation. And so we believe that we can play a leadership role in Michigan in eradicating the barriers that have been constructed by racism in terms of public health. And I think that'll reverberate in other areas.
Definitely. Amazing. Thank you so much for that. I completely agree. It's the same process with the Black Lives Matter movement. Just because we're saying our people matter and that we can empower one another is not saying anyone else's lives do not matter, which a lot of people try and say.
Yeah. I mean, so I it's funny. I had to deal with this when I was in college. So I went to Michigan.
Yeah.
And so when I was at Michigan, I was there from 2000 to 2005. And so in 2004, the undergraduate College of LS&A and the law school had our admissions policy challenged all the way up to the Supreme Court because Michigan was one of the public universities in the country that used race as a factor when considering admissions decisions. And people were so, in their feelings about that. Now, the role that I played as a student in terms of responding was I ran an organization for Black men on campus that was called HEADS. And met every Monday, 50 Black men, mostly students with some staff and faculty and Ann Arbor residents, just talking about like whatever was on our mind that particular day. And there were people who were so upset about that group. Like, why are y'all meeting together? And how come, other people who are not Black men can't be part of it? And the message was just like, this is not like a judgment on somebody else because this particular group of people has decided to have a conversation amongst ourselves. And similarly, so I think we need to get out of this notion that there's some zero-sum game when it comes to declarations of reality. Like Black Lives Matter should not have ever been a controversial statement because that does not mean that we're taking away from anything else. Just like I said with racism as a public health crisis, that doesn't mean that racism isn't other things or that other things are not public health crises, but we're just making a statement about this thing. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to do that.
Yes, completely agree. That's just how the youth works, especially on U of M campus with the BAM movement, Being Black at Michigan campaign. It really continues on and on. But just thinking about youth and youth involvement, do you believe there will be an opportunity for them during the leadership council? Because I know you said there'll be at least one room for person aged 18 to 35. Do you believe that there's a way that those even younger can participate?
Yes, certainly. People can absolutely apply. We wanted to have that. That's a unique declaration that is written into the executive order explicitly, that there should be a young person on the council. That's typically not done. And that was something that was very important to me as we designed this policy action. And so there's absolutely gonna be opportunity, because what I will foresee is that the activities of the council will include a number of conversations within the community. And I would imagine that there will be some that are youth led, that are youth focused, and that certainly all will have youth participation. So I think that there will be an important impact made by young people through this body. And I'm excited about that.
Definitely. Yes. Oh, I cannot wait to see what happens, and I look forward to more information. Also, that was mentioned during the press conference, Governor Whitmer is now requiring all state employees, including the executive board, to take implicit bias training, or the kind of the idea that we all have unconscious preferences that tends to impact our actions and livelihoods of others. And so can you tell us more about what this may look like?
I will. I will. Before that, just because I'm seeing the chat questions pop up. So people were asking, how do they apply to be a member of the Black Leadership Advisory Council? What you can do is you can go to michigan.gov/appointments, michigan.gov/appointments with an S plural. And there's a drop down on that page, and you need to select Black Leadership Advisory Council. That's how you apply. The application will be open through, I think, the middle of next week. So people should go on and do that. Now, the question you asked was about this implicit bias training. Let's talk about what implicit bias is and what it's not. What implicit bias means basically is that all of us, given our life experiences, given things that may have happened to us, things we may have seen, etc., people may have biases that they bring into situations that they are not even aware they're bringing. And this goes from everything from the overt stuff that, like, person sees me across the street and like holds their purse close, to someone has a particular reaction to a particular name on a piece of paper. And so what implicit bias training does is it gives us tools to recognize when that type of bias is impacting the choices we make, the actions that we take, and then gives us some sort of tools to be able to not only recognize that, but also to make sure that we are bringing in other information and factors so that we make a choice that is not overly impacted or overly weighted toward said biases. And this is something that, this is not calling people racist. This is just saying that we are human beings and all of us have this thing within us. I took my state mandated implicit bias training. What's today? Today's Thursday or Wednesday. I took mine on Monday. So it's real. It's real. And I think the governor took hers, I think, last Friday. So we in there, we live the lyrics. But I think it's important. And let me tell you a concrete example of what this looks like. So in the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the state of Michigan was one of the hardest hit states, we saw the impact of not having enough tests in Michigan. The testing is the front door to treatment for COVID-19. We didn't have enough tests. Frankly, we didn't have enough tests anywhere in the country because the president just did not develop a national strategy for testing. It's a whole other conversation. But we didn't have enough. So you had these situations where you had people, Black people, especially in like Detroit, were going to a doctor or a hospital and begging to get a test. I'm sick. My mother's sick. My father-in-law's sick. My brother's sick. They need to get tested for this coronavirus. And because there weren't enough tests, you had medical professionals in this situation where they had to choose who got tested and who did not. Whenever there's a choice point, there's an opportunity for bias to play a role in how that choice gets made. So therefore, you saw many of these stories that many of you may have read about in the media where people were denied testing. And a lot of those stories you heard that were coming out of Detroit, coming out of Grand Rapids, coming out of Saginaw, those were Black people who were denied tests. And so that led to poorer outcomes in the Black community and communities of color when it came to COVID-19 infections and deaths, which is part of why I started the Michigan Coronavirus Task Force on Racial Disparities. But this bias being present had a direct impact on the health outcomes for our community in this pandemic. So that is why this is so important. That is why we have made now implicit bias training, or we are on the process of making implicit bias training a requirement of medical licensure in the state of Michigan, only the second state to do that, because we think this is a tool in the toolbox to eradicate disparities.
Yeah, this is so important. I'm glad. Yeah, okay. Implicit bias training. That is amazing. Thank you. Oh, wow. This is real. And I love it. You're taking steps to truly make change. We're doing what we need to do now so that future generations don't have to go through what we've been through. And I think that is just great. I do want to know more about, I do think the training, will it be considered to be included in the curriculums at our schools? Because that's another very important lead. And a lot of people have biases and a lot of issues.
So I think that's a good it's a good thing to have a conversation about. The actions that we've taken do not give any sort of direction in that regard. But I do think it is important for people to recognize that they need to understand how to manage their biases. And so that's a tool for all of us. And I don't think that you can be too young to begin to understand that and begin to understand how to deal with it. So I think that's something to consider, and that's something I think we should take a look at.
Okay, well, I'm excited to hear more information about the consideration. Okay, and so I do want to ask more about, because Michigan, we're just the front runners of change. You just listed a few different examples that we're doing right now. So I do want to know more. What does reconnecting and reestablishing trust in the community look like for you in the new year, especially considering the Detroit Future City Plan, or kind of the goal to completely revitalize the city by 2030?
Well, for those who may not know, so I live in Detroit. I'm speaking with you from my home in Detroit. I live in Corktown, I live like right by the Lodge and Michigan Avenue, just to give you some perspective on the west side. Although I was born on the east side, so we can talk about that too. But I think that the responsibility that we have as leaders is to ensure that as our communities have the opportunity to grow and prosper, we make sure that all of us can see ourselves in that future, that we all recognize the role we have to play in that future, and that our elected and appointed and community leaders recognize their responsibility in making sure that everyone has a place in that future. That is part of what motivated me to come home, transparently. So I came home, I was living and working in Washington, D.C. My twins were actually born on my birthday in 2013 in Washington, D.C. And I wanted to raise my children at home. I wanted to, this was, circa 2014, I felt like the city was kind of turning a corner. And I wanted it to be clear that I wanted to have an impact on the corner it was turning, but I also wanted to be clear that Black folks have a role to play in that. And I thought it was important for my family to be part of that. And so I think we need to just be mindful of that. And so whatever choice points we have, we need to choose things that are more inclusive of more people, with a broader set of life experiences, that whether it's the revitalization of the city of Detroit or the definition of the economy of Michigan going forward, we have to make sure that as many people as possible have access to the tools and resources to participate in that. And that hasn't always been true. Many people may not feel that today. And so I think if I'm successful as a public servant, that will be more true for more people.
Definitely agree. Be the role model people can look up to. That's great. So during your speech at this year's Detroit Policy Conference, you kind of offered a new definition of entrepreneurship. Our conference is honestly based on your idea that people can achieve anything they work hard for. And the same mindset is how Life Leaders Inc., which stands for Leadership Fueled by Entrepreneurism, came to be. The youth voice matters, and I know we all just have the audacity to achieve. So one day I was scrolling through social media and the quote, "Be the change you want to see happen," really stuck with me. So kind of keeping in mind your idea of entrepreneurship, how did your decision-making process change over these past few months in order to improve yourself, family, and Michigan?
Well, that's a really thoughtful question. I mean, the way that I talked about in that speech in terms of redefining entrepreneurship, and the goal of redefining it really was to have a more expansive definition so that more people could understand. Entrepreneurs are people who essentially make something out of nothing. And a lot of us know how to do that. A lot of us have had to do that. And so that's why I talked about it being a person who sees problems and solves problems, who embraces opportunity, and who knew how to get things done. And so, for me, what that's been is, the thing that's been dominating my time, obviously, has been our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And so very early on, when they came here to the state of Michigan, or when it was present here, I got to work on doing things like, making sure that we had access to supports for the smallest businesses in our community. You may have seen the statistics that the economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and our national response to it have been really, really, really severe when it comes to Black and Latino-owned businesses. Black and Latino people are more likely to be laid off from work or have their hours cut during this. Well, I've been thinking a lot about how the state can get resources to these businesses and these individuals in a specific way. That's a problem that needs to be solved. I also have been thinking a lot about internet access. So when I came into office, I told you I'm a technologist by training. I used to be a software developer. That's what I went to Michigan for, to learn how to write software. And I've cared very deeply about internet access and the inequities that exist in internet access since a young age, frankly, because look, my first job, I built computers and I installed some computers at the Bustle Rec Center on the west side of Detroit. And I remember showing this little girl the internet for the first time in this class I taught. She was 8. Her name was April. And I remember how that just blew her mind when she saw a picture of a tiger that was in India and not at a zoo. And she just was like, wait a minute, it really blew her mind. And so I want everybody to have that experience. And so internet access being so stratified came to a head in the pandemic when we paused face-to-face education. And so now all of a sudden you had all these kids who had to learn, but didn't have access to distance learning. And so I've been thinking about what are the tools that we can use as state government to get more people internet access. So I was on the phone with, internet service providers and technology companies to get people access to the internet in their household. And so thinking about that and continue to think about how we can scale up internet access so that Michigan can become the first state that connects all of our people. That's the goal of mine, because that can unlock all sorts of potential. I also have been thinking about, again, how this pandemic has been impacting communities of color differently. We were one of the first states that actually collected data on race and ethnicity, and then we were actually reported it in public. And that is what created the foundation for the Coronavirus Task Force on Racial Disparities that I chair, and that we've been putting together ways to get people connected to primary care and testing capacity and all these things. What all three of those pieces have in common is that this was just about showing how you can take advantage of a situation that you're willing to pay attention to. And so by looking at this pandemic and thinking about what are some of the unique ways that it's impacting different communities, and then what are sort of the tools and assets that I have and that I can bring to bear to solve those problems, and then really just diving in and trying to get it done. And I'll say my partner, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, has been completely and unambiguously supportive. She has let me lead in these areas and has been a champion and a cheerleader for it. And that's great. And I say there are a lot of leaders, a lot of principals, a lot of governors who don't lead that way, who want to take up all the space, who need to have a fingers on everything. And she is someone who said, she asked me to be her partner and wants me to lead that way and empowers her team to do so. And it's one of the many, many reasons why I respect her so much as a leader and as a friend.
Yes, connection and unity is just so important. And I'm glad our government officials think the same way. That is awesome to hear. So I know this has just been an amazing discussion, but it is 11:30. I want to know, do you have a few minutes to still talk, or do you have to go?
I'll give you a couple more minutes.
You have a couple more minutes? Okay, great.
If my daughter runs in here, though, you'll know that it's time to go.
All right. That's completely fine. Okay, I do want to just going back into the COVID-19 pandemic. We were just so amazed at how practical and prompt you, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and just the rest of the admin were during this time. the pandemic and the continuation of the Black Lives Matter protests. You all did not hesitate to put safety first, and I'm thankful for that always. However, I know that there are people who felt the rules were a little harsh or unnecessary, and I'm sure the backlash didn't start during the pandemic. So I want to know, what are some ways you handle the stress and negative commentary from the people?
Well, it's part of the job, sign up to be a public servant. You recognize that people entrust you to make choices when they vote for you, and those choices will be popular in some communities and unpopular in others. And you sort of know that coming in. I mean, we did see there were some unique characteristics of this response. We saw, look, I'm as Lieutenant Governor, I'm the president of the Michigan Senate, and so I preside over that body. And I was there when you had guys with Confederate flags and giant, military style weapons in the chamber to intimidate me and other lawmakers and stuff like that. That was problematic and uncomfortable. But nevertheless, with the pandemic response, we recognized, thanks to the advice of the public health professionals and scientists that we had access to from the University of Michigan and other places, that if you took strong action, it may seem very strong in the moment, but in hindsight, it will be right, because we needed to take strong action to deal with this virus that no one understands. And so we ultimately did that because we thought it was the right thing to do. And I think that while we were hit hard in the beginning, I think that if you look at how our numbers are going now, even with the slight uptick plateauing, we saved lives. And we need to make choices that are decisive and impactful in order to save more. I mean, look, I'm a person, this pandemic has not been a theoretical exercise for me. 23 people in my life have died from it. And so we have to do what we need to do in these people's honor. These are real people with families and legacies and histories. My AAU basketball coach, my assistant pastor of the church I grew up in, my cousins, like, these are real people. And so we need to make the right choices in their honor so that they have not left us in vain.
Definitely. I completely agree with you. It has just been a blessing and a curse during just this whole entire time. But thank you again so much. I know you're a busy man and you're a family man, so I do want you.
It's my friend Garlin.
Hi.
We're about to finish in a second. We'll finish a second. Yeah.
That is amazing. It's adorable. Thank you so much again.
All right. Thanks, Wisdom. I appreciate you. I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great rest of the day, okay?
Thank you. You too. Please, everyone, give Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist another round of applause in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
I enjoyed this. Enjoy the rest of your day.